Order. I should inform the House that the bill on today's order paper is not being presented. Order, order. Before I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer, it will be convenient to remind honourable members that copies of the budget resolution will be available to them in the vote office at the end of the Chancellor's speech. It may also be appropriate to remind members that it is not the norm to intervene on the Chancellor of the Exchequer or the Leader of the Opposition, as was stated last year. Mr. Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Right Honourable George Osborne.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, this budget rewards work. Britain is going to earn its way in the world. There is no other road to recovery. This budget supports working families and helps those looking for work. It unashamedly backs business, and it is on the side of aspiration, those who want to do better for themselves and for their families. This budget reaffirms our unwavering commitment to deal with Britain's record debts. But because we've already taken difficult decisions, this can also be a reforming budget that seeks to repair the disastrous model of economic growth that created those debts. A model that saw manufacturing almost halve as a share of our national economy while the national debt doubled. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is how Britain will earn its way in the world, with far-reaching tax reform, with a simpler tax system where ordinary taxpayers understand what they're being asked to pay, with a tax system that is more competitive for business than any other major economy in the world, a tax system where millions of the lowest paid are lifted out of tax altogether, while the tax revenues we get from the wealthiest increase. But reforming tax is only part of the story. We will earn our way in the world by saying to all business, large and small, we will provide you with the modern infrastructure, new growth-friendly planning rules and employment laws, the kinds of schools and universities and colleges our future workforce needs. And in return, you, British business, have the self-confidence to invest, expand, hire, innovate and be the best. We earn our way in the world if we stop being afraid to identify Britain's strengths and reinforce them instead, backing industries like aerospace, energy, pharmaceuticals, creative media and science. A deliberate strategy to create a more balanced national economy where financial services are strong, but they are not the only string to our bow. Mr. Deputy Speaker, stability comes first. And the report from the Office for Budget Responsibility reminds us today of the risks to stability. Despite the welcome action by the European Central Bank, the impact of the sovereign debt crisis on the European economy has been significant. Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium and others are now in recession, and Germany's economy shrank in the last quarter. In today's report, the OBR are sharply revising down their forecast for euro area growth this year by 0.8% to minus 0.3%. Their forecast for world economic growth is also revised down over the next 2 years by 0.2% and 0.3% respectively. Of course, Britain is not immune from these developments in our largest export markets. And the OBR say today that the situation in the euro area remains a major risk to our forecast. Another risk they identify is a further spike in oil prices, and there is no doubt that the high oil price, driven both by real demand and the Iranian situation, is of great concern across the world. It means that the OBR's overall assessment of the outlook and risks to the British economy is broadly unchanged since last November's report. Despite these headwinds, there are, however, some more positive signs. The OBR expect the British economy to avoid a technical recession with positive growth in the first quarter of this year. They say that the British economy has, in their words, carried a little more momentum into the new year than previously anticipated. Indeed, the Office for Budget Responsibility is slightly revising up their growth forecast for the UK this year to 0.8%. Then they forecast 2% next year, 2.7% in...
Order. In fairness, I know the House has to breathe, but we want to hear from the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and we can't do that with too much noise on either side. Chancellor of the Exchequer.
They then forecast 2% next year, 2.7% in 2014, and 3% in both 2015 and 2016. The OBR's forecast unemployment rate is the same as it was last autumn. They expect it to peak this year at 8.7% before falling each year to 6.3% by the end of the forecast period. But they have revised down their estimate of the claimant count, which they now expect to be around 100,000 lower in each of the next 4 years than they previously forecast, peaking at 1.67 million this year rather than the 1.8 million they forecast in November. And they forecast 1 million more jobs in the economy over 5 years. Inflation is expected to fall throughout the period, from 2.8% this year to 1.9% next year, and then 2% by the end of the forecast period. I am today writing to the Governor of the Bank of England to reaffirm the CPI inflation target of 2%. The government's credible and responsible fiscal policy allows the independent central bank to pursue an activist monetary policy consistent with targeting low inflation. I confirm that the asset purchase facility will remain in place for the coming year. So unemployment is growing, inflation is coming down, and so too is the deficit. When this government came to office, the budget deficit stood at over 11%. The state was borrowing 1 in 4 of every single pound that it spent. Today, I can report that the deficit is falling and is forecast to reach 7.6% next year. The share of national income taken by the state will have fallen from almost 48% when we took office to 43% next year. We must stick to the course, so there will be no deficit-funded giveaways today. But because we've taken difficult decisions, nor do we need to tighten further, over the 5-year period, this is a fiscally neutral budget, and this is achieved through a modest reduction in both taxation and spending. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me turn to those fiscal forecasts. The whole House will be pleased to know that these have improved a little from the forecasts I presented in November. Borrowing this year is to come in at £126 billion, £1 billion lower than I forecast in the autumn, and over £30 billion a year lower than its peak the year before we came to office. Borrowing will then fall to £120 billion next year if you exclude the transfer of Royal Mail pension assets. It will then fall to £98 billion in 2013-14, then £75 billion, then £52 billion, reaching £21 billion by 2016-17. So in total, borrowing is £11 billion less than I last forecast in the autumn, and this will be used to pay down debt. In my first budget, I set the government the fiscal mandate of achieving a cyclically adjusted current balance by the end of the 5-year horizon. And the OBR confirmed today that we are on course to achieve that mandate and have eliminated the structural current deficit by 2016-17. They also confirmed that we are on course to reach our target for debt to be falling as a percentage of national income by the end of the Parliament in 2015-16. Public sector net debt is now set to peak at 76.3% in 2014-15, almost 2% lower than previously forecast, before falling the following year. A balanced structural current budget and falling debt, our deficit reduction plan is on course. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will not waver from it. To do so would risk a sudden loss of confidence and a sharp rise in interest rates, and we will not risk that. Instead, we reinforce today our commitment to fiscal responsibility, not just this year, but in the years ahead. The transfer of the £28 billion of assets from the Royal Mail Pension Fund to the Exchequer will free it from its crippling pension debts, ensure the pensions of hard-working staff are paid, and help to bring in new private sector investment. And some would have been tempted to spend the windfall. I do not propose to spend it. Instead, I have used it to pay off debt. Yeah. We will also maintain our control on welfare spending. The passing of the Welfare Reform Act 2 weeks ago was a historic moment, and I pay tribute to my right honourable friend, the Work and Pensions Secretary, and to all my coalition colleagues for supporting him against determined opposition from those who defend unlimited welfare. But even with the Act, the welfare budget is set to rise to consume 1/3 of all public spending. If nothing is done to curb welfare bills further, then the full weight of the spending restraint will fall on departmental budgets. The next spending review will have to confront this. So I am today publishing analysis that shows that if, in the next spending review, we maintain the same rate of reductions in departmental spending as we've done in this review, we would need to make savings in welfare of £10 billion by 2016. We will also address the rising costs of an ageing population and the burden this places on future generations. We will be publishing a white paper on social care. I've also said that we would consider proposals to manage future increases in the state pension age beyond the increases already announced. I can confirm today that there will be an automatic review of the state pension age to ensure it keeps pace with increases in longevity. Details of how this will operate will be published alongside the OBR's long-term fiscal sustainability report this summer. One area, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where government spending is expected to be lower than planned is, as the Prime Minister just indicated, Afghanistan. We were reminded again yesterday of the sacrifice so many of our servicemen and women have made. And as the Prime Minister made clear with the US President last week, UK forces will cease combat operation by the end of 2014. As a consequence, I can tell the House that the cost of operations, which are funded by the government's special reserve and entirely separate from the defence budget, are expected to be a total of £2.4 billion lower than planned over the remainder of the Parliament. Let me be clear today, the full cost of operations will continue to be met from the reserve, and our brave armed forces will get the equipment they need to complete the job. But I can ensure that some of the benefit of the lower cost is felt by those who fight so hard and give so much for our nation's security. We will fund an extra £100 million of improvements in the accommodation of our armed forces and their families. I will also double the Families Welfare Grant, which is used to provide additional support to families left behind when people deploy. We've already doubled the operational allowance. Today, I am doubling the rate of council tax relief. The thousands serving our country in operations overseas will receive 100% relief on an average council tax bill. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our commitment to reduce the deficit is keeping interest rates low. In this budget, we take measures to ensure that the benefits of those low market interest rates are felt across the economy. They are certainly benefiting the taxpayer. Thanks to the reduction in the deficit and our low interest rates, this government is saving a total of £36 billion in debt interest payments compared to its predecessor. This year is the 400th anniversary of the creation of the Treasury Board and the modern Treasury. There have been times recently when the Treasury has been borrowing money more cheaply than at any previous time in that 400-year history. And few countries in Europe could say that at the moment. This reflects the confidence investors have in Britain's ability to pay its rent. I now want to test whether we can extend these benefits further into the future and diversify our portfolio. At present, the longest gilt we currently offer to the market is 50 years. The Debt Management Office will consult on the case for issuing gilts with maturities longer than 50 years and the case for a perpetual gilt with no fixed redemption date, something Britain last felt able to do 6 decades ago. We are also taking the opportunity to rebuild Britain's reserves, which had fallen to historically low levels. I can confirm, Mr. Deputy Speaker, our gold holdings have risen in value to £11 billion. Sadly, this does not include the 400 or so tonnes of gold sold a decade ago for £2 billion, which would now be worth 6 times that at over £13 billion. Mr. Deputy Speaker. Working families are already being helped by historic low mortgage rates. The new buy scheme that we introduced last week uses the government's balance sheet to help those who cannot afford the larger deposits that some mortgage companies are now demanding. It comes alongside a new reinvigorated right to buy. And to ensure that there are new homes to buy, we are today expanding the Great Britain Building Fund that provides upfront finance to construction firms. We are also passing on our low interest rates to small businesses through the National Loan Guarantee Scheme. This started operation yesterday. Barclays, Lloyds, the RBS, Santander and the new business bank Aldermore are all involved. 20 billion of guarantees in total will be available. In the autumn statement, I also allocated £1 billion to invest in funds that lend directly to the mid-cap businesses that are the backbone of our economy. This is an alternative source of finance to the banks. The response has exceeded our expectations. 24 funds have submitted proposals. I am today shortlisting 7 of them, and such has been the quality of the bids, I have also decided to increase the size of the finance partnership by 20%. I am also today expanding the enterprise finance guarantee. Stability, credibility, the low interest rates they bring, and passing those low rates to families and businesses. These are necessary for growth, but alone they are not sufficient. And as a nation, we have to make a choice. This country became seduced by large deficits and the illusion of cheap finance. Now, do we watch as the Brazils and the Chinas and the Indias of this world power ahead of us in the global economy, or do we have the national resolve to say, no, we will not be left behind, we want to be out in front? And that is this government's resolve. Under this government, Britain has moved into the top 10 of the most competitive places in the world to do business. But we have to do more, and here's how. First, exports. Over the last decade, our share of world exports shrank as Germany's grew. We sold more to Ireland than to Brazil, Russia, India and China put together. That was the road to Britain's economic irrelevance. And we want to double our nation's exports to £1 trillion this decade. So we're expanding UK export finance and setting out new plans to help smaller firms in new markets. Exports abroad must be accompanied by investment at home. Britain has a reputation as a remarkably open and welcoming place for investment. We must never allow protectionist rhetoric to creep into our political system. Instead, we're actively seeking investment from overseas pension and sovereign wealth funds and working to develop London as a new offshore market for the Chinese currency. We also want investment from British pension funds in British infrastructure, and we're now working with a dozen of the large pension schemes specifically on that, with the first British government to set out in a national infrastructure plan the projects we're going to prioritise in the coming decade. The roads, railways, clean energy and water and broadband networks we all need and we have identified. I also believe this country must confront the lack of airport capacity in the southeast of England. We cannot cut ourselves off from the fastest growing cities in the world, and the Transport Secretary will set out government thinking later this summer. We want to look at the opportunities for increasing the role of private investment in the road network, learning lessons from the water industry. And I confirm today that Network Rail will extend the Northern Hub, adding to the electrification of the Transpennine Rail route by upgrading the Hope Valley line between Manchester and Sheffield and improving the Manchester to Preston and Blackpool and Manchester to Bradford lines. For years, transport investment in the north of England was neglected, not under this government. We are working with our great cities to devolve decision-making powers, and we are striking a groundbreaking deal this week with Manchester to support £1.2 billion in growth-enhancing infrastructure in that city. We will support £150 million of tax increment financing to help local authorities promote development, and we will provide an extra £270 million to the Growing Places Fund. In all this, we are working with local areas to support their ideas for growing the private sector in parts of the country where the state has taken a larger and larger share of the economy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Mayor of London is also a very effective champion for the city he runs so well. We will work with him on plans this summer to go on investing in London transport, lengthening commuter trains, extending the Underground and exploring new river crossings in East London. So from the allocation made to the Mayor through the Growing Places Fund, he will be creating a new £70 million development fund to attract new business and new jobs. And the Mayor has persuaded me of the opportunities the new Royal Docks Enterprise Zone offers our largest city. If we offer enhanced capital allowances there, so we will. Mr. Deputy Speaker, 24 enterprise zones are now going ahead across England. Chinese investment is pouring into the zone in Liverpool. The Marches zone in the West Midlands is already expanding. I want other parts of the United Kingdom to benefit from these policies. And the Chief Secretary can confirm today that we will offer enhanced capital allowances for businesses starting up in the new Scottish enterprise areas in Dundee, Irvine and Nigg, and there will be a new Welsh enterprise zone in Deeside, while we look forward to the first enterprise zone in Northern Ireland. I also want to see investment in our world-leading energy sector, including renewables. We've launched the Green Investment Bank, open for business next month. We've introduced the carbon price floor into our tax system to encourage investment, and we set the rate today. Combined heat and power plants will not be liable to carbon price support rates on fuels used for heat. Renewable energy will play a crucial part in Britain's energy mix, but I will always be alert to the costs we're asking families and businesses to bear. Environmentally sustainable has to be fiscally sustainable as well. The carbon reduction commitment was established by the previous government. It is cumbersome, bureaucratic, and imposes unnecessary costs on business. So we will seek major savings in the administrative cost of the commitment for business. And if those cannot be found, I will bring forward proposals this autumn to replace the revenues with an alternative environmental tax. Gas is cheap and has much less carbon than coal and will be the largest single source of electricity in the coming years. And so my right honourable friend, the Energy Secretary, will set out our new gas generation strategy in the autumn to secure investment. And I also want to ensure we extract the greatest possible amount of oil and gas from our reserves in the North Sea. We are today introducing a major package of tax changes to achieve this. We will end the uncertainty over decommissioning tax relief that has hung over the industry for years by entering into a contractual approach. And we are also introducing new allowances, including a £3 billion new field allowance for large and deep fields to open up west of Shetland, the last area of the basin that has been left to be developed, a huge boost for investment in the North Sea. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we shouldn't be shy about identifying our successful industries and reinforcing them. Around 1/5 of the world's top 100 medicines originate from UK research. So we're backing our life sciences sector through creating the Francis Crick Institute at St Pancras and cutting taxes on patents to make this one of the most attractive places in the world to invent new medicines. We've protected the science budget. Now we're committing £100 million of support alongside the private sector for investment in major new university research facilities. And with the world's second largest aerospace industry, we will also establish a UK Centre for Aerodynamics to open next year that will encourage innovation in aircraft design and commercialise new ideas. And today we also set Britain this industrial ambition, that we turn Britain into Europe's technology centre. We will start with digital content. The film tax credit, protected in our spending review, helps generate over £1 billion of film production investment in the UK last year alone. Today I am announcing our intention to introduce similar schemes for the video games, animation and high-end TV production industries. Not only will this help stop premium British TV programmes like Birdsong being made abroad, it will also attract top international investors like Disney and HBO to make more of their premium shows in the UK. It will support our brilliant video games and animation industries too. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is the determined policy of this government that we keep Wallace and Gromit exactly where they are.
Order! I would have thought that the government side would want to hear more from the Chancellor, because the country does. Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, to be Europe's technology centre, we also need to have the best technology infrastructure. 2 years ago, Britain had some of the slowest broadband speeds in Europe. Today, our plans will deliver some of the fastest, with 90% of the population having access to superfast broadband and improved mobile phone coverage for rural areas and along key roads across the UK. But we should not be complacent by saying it's enough to be the best in Europe when countries like Korea and Singapore do even better. So today, we're funding ultra-fast broadband and Wi-Fi in 10 of the UK's largest cities: Belfast, Birmingham, Bradford, Bristol, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Leeds, Manchester, Newcastle and London. Now, my honourable friend for Brighton-Kempton asked me to help small cities too, no doubt with his own city in mind. I agree, £50 million will be available for smaller cities too. And the fastest digital speeds in the world available in our cities, with the most connected countryside in Europe, the most creative digital continent everywhere. That is what a modern industrial policy looks like. And the Business Secretary and I have asked Michael Heseltine to review by the autumn how government spending departments and other public bodies can work better with the private sector on economic development. From Liverpool to Canary Wharf, Michael knows how it's done. And of course, these projects succeeded because they were not killed off by the planning system. You can't earn your future if you can't get planning permission. And global businesses have diverted specific investments that would have created hundreds of jobs in some of the most deprived communities in Britain to countries like Germany and the Netherlands because they can't get planning permission here. That is unacceptable. And next week, my right honourable friends, the Community Secretary and the Planning Minister, will publish the results of our overhaul of planning regulation. We're replacing 1,000 pages of guidance with just 50 pages. We're introducing a presumption in favour of sustainable development while protecting our most precious environments. The new policy comes into effect when the National Planning Policy Framework is published next Tuesday. This is the biggest reduction in business red tape ever undertaken. As a country, we also want to make the most of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Some of the biggest events will be on a Sunday. When millions of visitors come to Britain to see them, we don't want to hang up a closed for business sign. So we will introduce legislation limited to relaxing the Sunday trading laws for 8 Sundays only, starting on July the 22nd. Mr. Deputy Speaker, earning our way in the world means giving young people the skills to compete. And in time, my right honourable friend, the Education Secretary's school reforms will do more to improve the long-term economic performance of our country than any budget measure ever will. But we've got to help the young adults who've already been let down by the school system. We're offering a record number of apprenticeships, and our youth contract comes into force next month. I can tell the House we are also exploring the idea of enterprise loans. Young people get a loan to go to university or college. Now we want to help them get a loan to start their own business. We're also looking to see whether we can make public sector pay more responsive to local pay rates. It is something, as we just heard, the last government introduced into the court service. London waiting already exists across the public sector. Indeed, the opposition have proposed the interesting idea of regional benefit rates. So we should see what we can do to make our public services more responsive and help our private sector to grow and create jobs in all parts of the country. We've asked the independent pay review bodies to look at this issue. Today, we're publishing the evidence that the Treasury is submitting to them, and some departments will have the option of moving to more local pay for those civil servants whose pay freezes end this year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, new infrastructure and investment, ambitious reforms on planning, education and welfare to help businesses to create jobs. These will all help Britain earn its way in the world, but we also need a tax system that supports work. 200 years ago, Adam Smith set out the 4 principles of good taxation, and they remain good principles today. Taxes should be simple, predictable, support work, and they should be fair. The rich should pay the most and the poor the least. The tax system this government inherited from its predecessor has drifted far from these principles. We've already addressed some of the problems. We've established an Office of Tax Simplification to drive out complexity. Companies are moving to Britain, not away. We stopped the jobs tax. We've taken 1 million low-paid people out of tax altogether. But now we need further reform. We need to give Britain a modern tax system fit for the modern world. The first goal is a far simpler tax system, which businesses can easily navigate and where ordinary taxpayers understand what they're being asked to pay. So we will radically change the administration of tax for our smallest firms. Last year, I asked the Office of Tax Simplification for recommendations. They have proposed that we tax small firms on the basis of the cash that passes through their businesses, rather than asking them to spend a huge amount of time doing calculations designed for big businesses. I agree. So we will consult on this new cash basis for calculating tax for firms with a turnover of up to £77,000, double what actually the Office proposed. This will make filling in tax returns dramatically simpler for up to 3 million firms. We're also pressing forward with our ambition to integrate the operation of income tax and national insurance I announced at last year's budget, so we don't ask businesses to run 2 different payroll tax administrations. A detailed consultation on how we do this is being published next month. We will also address some of the loopholes and anomalies in our VAT system. For example, at present, soft drinks and sports drinks are charged VAT, sports nutrition drinks are not. Hot takeaway food on the high streets has been charged VAT for more than 20 years, but some new hot takeaway products in supermarkets are not. And some companies are using the VAT rules that exempt the rental of land to avoid the tax that their competitors are paying. We're publishing our plans today to remove loopholes and anomalies, but we keep the broad exemptions on food, children's clothes, printed books and newspapers. We should also simplify the age-related allowances, which the Office of Tax Simplification have recently highlighted as a particularly complicated feature of the tax system. The NAO points out that many pensioners don't understand them. These allowances require around 150,000 pensioners to fill in self-assessment forms, and as we have real increases in the personal allowance, their value is already being eroded away. So over time, we will simplify the tax system for pensioners by doing away with the complexity of the additional age-related allowances for anyone reaching the age of 65 on or after the 6th of April 2013, and I will freeze the cash value of the allowance for existing pensioners until it aligns with the personal allowance. This will protect the existing level of allowance pensioners have while introducing a new single personal allowance for all. It is a major simplification, it saves money, and no pensioner will lose in cash terms. Under this government, pensioners next month will receive the largest ever cash increase in the basic state pension of £5.30 a week. Now we want to simplify the basic state pension and its interaction with the second state pension. I pay tribute to the work my honourable friend, the Pensions Minister, has done on this. Such is the complexity of this means-tested system, only someone like our Pensions Minister can work out exactly what someone's entitled to and what they need to save. So I can confirm that we will introduce a new single-tier pension for future pensioners set above the means test. This is currently estimated at £140. It will be based on contributions, and it will cost no more than the current system in any year. We will bring forward further details later this spring. A single, generous, basic state pension for those who have worked hard and saved hard all their lives, and a further major simplification of our tax and benefit system. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the information age, people should know what taxes they're paying and what their money is being spent on. Now, my honourable friend, the member for Ipswich, recently proposed to this House that we send to taxpayers an annual statement showing them just that. I think this is an excellent idea, and I intend to put it into practice. HMRC contacts roughly half of taxpayers each year. From 2014, these 20 million taxpayers will at the same time receive a new personal tax statement. This will tell people how much income tax and national insurance they have paid, their average tax rates, how this contributes to public spending. In other words, how much proportionally of their tax bill goes to fund their healthcare, education or welfare bills, and how much is spent on servicing interest payments on the national debt. People will know what they're paying and what they're paying it for. A tax system that is simple and transparent. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is our first goal. Our second goal is a tax system that is more competitive for business than any other major economy in the world. Our predecessors wanted to increase taxes on small businesses. Instead, we've cut the tax rate on small companies to 20%. Our predecessors wanted to increase national insurance on jobs, and we've cut it. Our new controlled foreign company rules will be legislated for in the coming finance bill and will stop global firms leaving Britain as they were and encourage them to start coming here. This government also supports research and development here in Britain instead of abroad. We've already increased the generosity of the R&D tax credit for smaller firms. I confirm that from next year we will also introduce an above-the-line R&D tax credit that business organisations like the EEF, the ID and the CBI have campaigned hard for. And we will help new start-up businesses recruit and retain talent by more than doubling the Enterprise Management Incentive Scheme grant limit to £250,000 and easing the rules so that academics in our universities can turn great ideas into great companies. The Treasury will review for this autumn what more we can do to encourage employee ownership. All of these tax reductions will help win business for Britain. But the headline rate of corporation tax remains the most visible sign of how competitive our country is. We've already cut the rate from 28% to 26%. This April, it is due to fall again to 25%. I can tell the House today that we will have a further cut of 1% to be implemented right away. From next month, Britain will have a corporation tax rate of just 24%. And we will continue with the 2 further cuts planned next year and the year after, so that by 2014, Britain will have a 22% rate of corporation tax. This is the biggest sustained reduction in business tax rates for a generation. A headline rate that is not just lower than our competitors, but dramatically lower, 18% lower than the US, 16% lower than Japan, 12% below France, and 8% below Germany. An advertisement for investment and jobs in Britain. And it is a rate that puts our country within sight of a 20% rate of business tax that would align basic rate income tax, the small companies rate, and the corporation tax rate. I am also increasing the rate of the bank levy to 0.105% from next January, so that the additional corporation tax cuts do not benefit the banks. And so our levy will in addition raise the £2.5 billion a year that we said it would. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that brings me to the main duties. Let me start with alcohol duty. The government will shortly be publishing its alcohol strategy to address the growing problem of alcohol abuse and the many billions of pounds it costs our NHS and the criminal justice system. But today I have no further changes to make to the duty rates set out by my predecessor. Turning to tobacco duty, smoking remains the biggest cause of preventable illness and premature death in the UK. There is clear evidence that increasing the cost of tobacco encourages smokers to quit and discourages young people from taking it up. So duty on all tobacco products will rise by 5% above inflation. That's 37 pence on a packet of cigarettes, and this will take effect at 6 p.m. tonight. One area where I am today making substantial changes One area, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where I am making substantial changes is gambling duties. The VAT treatment of gaming machines is being repeatedly challenged by operators in the courts. So I will introduce a new machine games duty with a standard rate of 20% and a lower rate for low stakes and prize machines of 5% of net takings. The current duty regime for remote gambling introduced by the last government was levied on a place of supply basis. This allowed overseas operators to largely avoid it, and much of the industry has as a result moved offshore. 90% of online gambling consumed by our citizens is now supplied from outside the UK, and the remaining UK operations are under pressure to leave. This is clearly not fair and not a sensible way to support jobs in Britain. So we intend to introduce a tax regime based on the place of consumption, where the customer is based, not the company. And from this April, we will also introduce double taxation relief for remote gambling. These changes will create a more level playing field and protect jobs here. I turn now to fuel and vehicle excise duties. High oil prices have put real pressure on household budgets and on businesses. That is why we took action in last year's budget to cut fuel duty, so it is 6 pence lower than our predecessors planned. We have also scrapped the last government's fuel duty escalator of annual above-inflation rises, regardless of the oil price, and are today confirming the fair fuel stabiliser. Above-inflation rises will only return if the oil price falls below £45 on a sustained basis, currently equivalent to around $75. These measures mean that this government has eased the burden on motorists by £4.5 billion at a time when money is very short. I do not propose to make any further changes to the fuel duty plans already set out. I am increasing vehicle excise duty by inflation only. To encourage fuel-efficient fleets, we will extend the 100% first-year capital allowance for low-emission business cars, reduce the CO2 threshold for the main capital allowance rates, and increase the percentage list price of company cars subject to tax. I can also announce that I am again freezing vehicle excise duty for road hauliers. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I now turn to personal and property taxation. My goal is a tax system where the lowest paid are lifted out of tax altogether, while the tax revenues we get from the richest increase. Now, most wealthy people pay their taxes, and without them we could not begin to afford the public services upon which this country depends. But under the last government, it was the boast of some high earners that with the help of their accountants, they were paying less in tax than their cleaners. I regard tax evasion and indeed aggressive tax avoidance as morally repugnant. We've increased both the resources and the number of staff working on evasion and avoidance at HMRC. Taken together, the anti-avoidance measures in this year's finance bill will increase tax revenue over the next 5 years by around £1 billion and protect a further £10 billion that could have been lost. This week, we have signed a further agreement with the Swiss to stop UK residents from evading tax. We've done all these things, but today we do even more. On coming to office, I asked Graham Aronson QC to establish whether a general anti-avoidance rule could work in the UK tax system. He recommended that such a rule would improve our ability to tackle tax avoidance without damaging the competitiveness of the UK as a place to do business, We agree, so we will introduce one. We will consult on the details of the new rule and legislate for it in next year's finance bill. A major source of abuse, and one that rouses the anger of many of our citizens, is the way some people avoid the stamp duty that the rest of the population pays, including by using companies to buy expensive residential property. I have given plenty of public warnings that this abuse should stop, and now we are taking action. I am increasing the stamp duty land tax charged applied to residential properties over £2 million bought into a corporate envelope. The charge will be 15% and it will take effect today. We will also consult on the introduction of a large annual charge on those £2 million residential properties which are already contained in corporate envelopes. And to ensure that wealthy non-residents are also caught by these changes, we will be introducing capital gains tax on residential property held in overseas envelopes. We are also announcing legislation today to close down the sub-sales relief rules as a route of avoidance. And let me make this absolutely clear to people. If you buy a property in Britain that is used for residential purposes, then we will expect stamp duty to be paid. This is the clear intention of Parliament, and I will not hesitate to move swiftly, without notice and retrospectively, if inappropriate ways around these new rules are found. People have been warned. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is fair when money is tight, and so many families could do with help, that those buying the most expensive homes contribute more. From midnight tonight, we will introduce a new stamp duty land tax rate of 7% on properties worth more than £2 million. I also intend to deal with the unlimited use of income tax reliefs. Let's be clear, most rich people pay a lot of tax. It is also right that we have tax reliefs that promote investment, support charitable giving, and reflect genuine business loss. But it can't be right that some people make unlimited use of these reliefs year after year. Everyone in this country, and particularly those with the highest incomes, should contribute a fair share to the Exchequer. Now, some reliefs, like the Enterprise Investment Scheme and pensions relief, are already capped, and I don't intend to make any significant changes to pensions relief in this budget. But to make sure that those on the highest income contribute a fair share, I am introducing a new cap on those reliefs that are currently uncapped. From next year, anyone seeking to claim more than £50,000 of these reliefs in any one year will have a cap set at 25% of their income. We've capped benefits. Now it is right to cap tax reliefs too. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that brings me to the rates of income tax and the additional rate of 50p. This tax rate is the highest in the G20. It is higher not just than the tax rate of America, but also of major European countries like France, Italy, and Germany. It is widely acknowledged by business organisations and international observers as harming the British economy. And like the previous Chancellor who introduced it, I've always said it was temporary. But I also said 3 years ago that I would not be prepared to reduce it while we were asking the whole public sector to accept a pay freeze, and I will stick to those pledges. A 50p tax rate, with all the damage it does to Britain's competitiveness, can only be justified if it raises significant sums of money. In last year's budget, I asked Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs to look at the evidence, and especially to look at the self-assessment tax receipts that have come in since this January. I am publishing their report today, and what it reveals is that the 50p tax rate has caused massive distortions. HMRC find that an astonishing £16 billion of income was deliberately shifted into the previous tax year at a cost to the taxpayer of £1 billion, something that the previous government's figures made no allowance for whatsoever. Self-assessment receipts this year are below forecast by some £3.6 billion, while other tax receipts have held up. The increase from 40p to 50p raised just a third of the £3 billion we were told it would raise. Of course, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the previous government initially proposed a rate of 45 pence and then increased that to 50 pence. Let me tell the House what Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs say about the difference between 50p and 45p. Their figures, I'm coming on to the OBR, don't you worry. Their figures tell the story. The direct cost is only £100 million a year. Indeed, HMRC calculate the loss of other tax revenues may even cancel that out. In other words, it raises at most a fraction of what we were told and may raise nothing at all. So from April next year, the top rate of tax will be 45 pence. No Chancellor can justify a tax rate that damages our economy.
Order! We're nearly coming to the end, and I want the same respect to be given to the Leader of the Opposition. So please, Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, no Chancellor can justify a tax rate that damages our economy and raises next to nothing. It is as simple as that. And thanks to the other new taxes on the rich I've announced today, we'll be getting 5 times more money each and every year from the wealthiest in our society. So the richest pay more.
Order. Mr. Flello, you're getting very excited at the back. I'm sure you want to calm down. It's not good for your health. Chancellor of the Exchequer.
So the richest pay more, the economy benefits, Britain is competitive again. Now, the Shadow Chancellor and quite a few members opposite has said that the HMRC report is not enough and that the Office for Budget Responsibility should pass judgment. They have. Because these days, the direct costing the Treasury applies to every budget measure is independently assessed and certified by the OBR. And unlike the previous government, they also assess the cash flow consequences of forestalling. When it comes to the £100 million direct permanent cost of this measure, the OBR say this: we believe that this is a reasonable and central estimate. And they also assess as reasonable the estimate that the new taxes I've introduced on the rich today directly raise 5 times that amount. That is £500 million. £500 million we can now use to help people on lower and middle incomes keep more of their earnings. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the spending review, we took the difficult decision to remove child benefit from families with a higher rate taxpayer. I said then that I simply could not justify asking those earning £15,000 or £30,000 a year to go on paying child benefit to those earning £80,000 or £100,000. And I stand by that principle. All sections of society must make a contribution to dealing with the deficit. Without this measure, we wouldn't get the job done. But I said I wanted to do this in a way that is fair and that does not involve setting up some new means-tested tax credit system for millions of families. And I said I would set out exactly how this measure would be implemented in this budget. We want to avoid a cliff edge that means people lose all their child benefit when they earn just £1 more. So I can today confirm that instead of withdrawing child benefit all at once when people earn more than the high rate threshold, the benefit will only be withdrawn when someone in the household has an income of more than £50,000, and the withdrawal will be gradual, 1% of child benefit for every extra £100 earned over £50,000, so there's no cliff edge, and only those with an income of more than £60,000 lose all of their benefits. This means an extra 750,000 families will keep some or all of their child benefit. 90% of all families will remain eligible for child benefit. Now we can afford to implement the child benefit policy in this way, because if instead of extending the full benefit of this budget's increase in the personal allowance to all high-rate taxpayers, as we did last year, we will pass on a quarter of the benefit to high-rate taxpayers and spend the rest on helping families with children towards the bottom of the higher rate band, as I've explained. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that brings me on to the personal allowance and the central goal of this budget, which is to support working families. This coalition government believes that the best way to support working people on the lowest incomes is to take them out of tax altogether. And the best way of getting money directly into the pockets of working families on middle incomes is to increase the amount of their earnings they can keep before they pay tax. That is why this government has set itself the goal of raising the personal tax-free allowance to £10,000. And we've promised real increases every year to reach that. In my last two budgets, we have made great strides forward. Last year, the personal allowance rose by £1,000. In 2 weeks' time, it will go up by another £630 to £8,105. And together, these increases have taken over 1 million low-paid people out of tax altogether. Today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to go much further and much faster. I am announcing the largest ever increase in the personal allowance, that is the amount that people can earn tax-free. From next April, that amount will increase by £1,100. Every working person on low or middle incomes will benefit. People will be able to earn up to £9,205 before they have to pay any tax. Millions Mr. Deputy Speaker, millions of working people will be £220 better off every year. That's £170 better off after inflation. Because higher rate earners will also benefit, 24 million people earning less than £100,000 a year will gain from this measure. We are in touching distance of the goal of a £10,000 personal allowance that we all share. And I can tell the country that as a result of our budgets, people working full-time on the minimum wage will have seen their income tax bill cut in half. And this coalition government will have taken 2 million people, 2 million of the lowest paid people in our country out of tax altogether. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the middle of this Parliament, in difficult economic times, this coalition government has not settled for a do-nothing budget. We have not ducked the difficult choices. We've taken them head-on. A competitive top rate of tax, more revenues from those best able to pay, fewer reliefs, a tax cut for working people, support for families, low-income earners, taken out of tax altogether. Alongside it, one of the lowest rates of business tax in the world, a simpler tax code, and a country where its citizens know the taxes they are paying and what they are paying it for. We have achieved all this and kept to our deficit plan. Let us be resolved. No people will strive as the British will strive. No country will adapt as the British will adapt. No country will value those who work as we will value those who work. Together, the British people will share in the effort and share the rewards. This country borrowed its way into trouble. Now we're going to earn our way out. And I commend the budget to the House.
I think we've had enough. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. You may get a new job at this rate. Under Standing Order number 51, the first motion entitled Provisional Collection of Taxes must be decided without debate. Will the Chancellor of the Exchequer please move formally? The question is that the pursuant of Section 5 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1968, provisional statutory effect shall be given to the following motions. A. Tobacco products duty rates, motion number 40. B. Alcohol liqueur duties rates, motion number 41. C. Amusement machine licence duty rates, motion number 47. D. Landfill sites in Scotland, motion number 58. E, stamp duty, prevention of avoidance, subsidies, etc. Motion number 65. And F, stamp duty, land tax, rates residential property where consideration exceeds £2 million. Motion number 6. G, stamp duty, land tax, higher rate for certain acquisitions, companies, etc. Motion number 67. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I shall now call upon the Chancellor of the Exchequer to move motion entitled Amendment to the Law, and it is the motion that the debate will take place on today and on succeeding days. The remaining motions will be put at the end of the budget date on Monday 26th of March. Will the Chancellor please move the amendment of the law motion? It's moved. The question is that exhibit to amend the law with respect to the national debt and the public revenue and to further provision in connection with the finance. 2, that this resolution does not extend to making of any amendment with respect to the value-added tax so as to provide A, for zero rating or exempting a supply acquisition of importation, B, for refunding an amount of tax, C, for any relief other than the relief that 1, so far as this is applicable to goods that applies to goods of every description, and 2, so far as it is applicable to services, applies to services of every description. I now call the Leader of the Opposition, the Right Honourable Edward Miliband.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor spoke for an hour, but one of his phrases was missing. There was one thing he didn't say. Today marks the end of We're All in It Together. Because after today's budget...
Order! Mr Gummer, I don't think we need you to lead the cheerleading. We've had and given the respect to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I expect the same respect to be given to the Leader of the Opposition. Ed Miliband.
Because after today's budget, millions will be paying more while millionaires pay less. A year ago, the Chancellor said in his budget speech, and I quote, "Now would not be the right time to remove the 50p tax rate when we are asking others in our society..." Is he saying he didn't say it? He said, "Now would not be the right time to remove the 50p tax rate when we are asking others in our society on much lower incomes to make sacrifices." That is exactly what he has done. Tax credits cut, child benefit taken away, fuel duty rising, and what has he chosen to make his priority? For Britain's millionaires, a massive income tax cut each and every year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the fairness test for this budget was whether the Chancellor used every penny he could to help middle-income families that are squeezed. He has failed that test. Anyone who listened to the Chancellor will be asking the same question. What planet are he and the Prime Minister living on? 1 million young people out of work, 50 businesses going bust every day, a cost of living crisis for families. They promised change, but things have got worse, not better. What did he promise us in last year's budget? He said he would, and I quote, Mr. Deputy Speaker, put fuel in the tank of the British economy. He promised growth of 2.5% in 2012. Today, he comes to the House and tells us it will be just 0.8%. Growth down last year, growth down this year, growth down next year. Every time he comes to the House, he offers a different excuse, but the reality is his plan has failed. Last year, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he told us unemployment would peak in 2011. And what has he delivered? We're into 2012, and unemployment is rising month upon month upon month. His plan has failed. And he promised us also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, last year, the deficit would be gone by the end of the Parliament. But today he admits he is borrowing over 150 billion more than he said he would. His plan has failed. And in the face of failure, what does he offer? Not a change in economic strategy, not a guarantee of jobs for the young unemployed, not targeting every penny he could at working families. No, we know the budget for the Chancellor was to deliver a tax cut for people earning over £150,000 a year. There are 30 million taxpayers in this country. This policy will do absolutely nothing for 29,700,000 of them. How can the priority for our country be an income tax cut for the richest 1% at a time when the squeezed middle are facing rising petrol prices, higher energy bills, tax credits and child benefit being cut? Think of what he could have done with the money. He could have reversed his cuts to tax credits. He could have done something for pensioners. And in fact, I think there is a tax rise for pensioners hidden in the detail of this budget. He could have done more to undo the damage on child benefit, but he claims he can't afford it. Let me tell the Chancellor, every time in the future he tries to justify an unfair decision by saying times are tough, we'll remind him he is the man who chose to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on those who need it least. Wrong choices, wrong priorities, wrong values, out of touch, same old Tories. And let's come to his claims on stamp duty. Let's come to his claims on stamp duty, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There are 300,000 people benefiting each and every year from his top-rate tax cut. There are 4,000 houses sold each year for more than £2 million. So 99% of those who gain from his millionaire's tax cut will be totally unaffected by the rise in stamp duty. And they will get a massive windfall from this Chancellor. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor didn't tell us what this meant in pounds and pence. So let me... Oh, the Prime Minister thinks the Chancellor did say how much each person is getting as a result of his top-rate tax cut. He didn't, and I'm going to tell him how much. There are 14,000 people earning over £1 million in Britain. The Chancellor's decision today means each of them get a tax cut. Not of £1,000, not of £5,000, not of £10,000, a tax cut of over £40,000.
Order. It's not good for the opposition to not allow the Leader of the Opposition to speak. Ed Miliband.
Not just this year, but for every year. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what happens to those families who earn in 1 year half of what the Chancellor has so casually given away to the richest in the last hour? Families on £20,000 a year, a nurse or lorry driver. Even after the personal allowance change, they're not going to be better off. They're going to be worse off. Put aside the VAT rise and all the other tax rises that have happened. From this April alone, there will be a further £253 a year worse off. All he is doing for ordinary families is giving with one hand and taking far more away with the other. It's a millionaire's budget that squeezes the middle. Wrong choices, wrong priorities, wrong values, out of touch, same old Tories. Under his tax cut, a banker earning £5 million will get an extra £240,000 a year. Let's call this what it really is, the government's very own banker's bonus. Now, presumably, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he wants us to believe that the £240,000 tax cut is necessary to make them work harder, the bankers. It's one rule for them, and it's another rule for everyone else. Because this April, the Chancellor will be telling a family working for 16 hours on the minimum wage that if they don't work more hours, they will lose nearly £4,000 in tax credits. It tells you everything you need to know about the values of the Chancellor and Prime Minister. The poor will only work harder by making them poorer. The rich will only work harder by making them richer. Wrong choices, wrong values, wrong priorities, same old Tories. And while everybody else is squeezed, what is the Chancellor's priority? It is the massive tax cut for his Christmas card list. Now, the Chancellor talked a lot about tax transparency. Let's have what? Let's have some, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let's have some.
Mr. Hans, I think you need to calm down. It's not good for you. It's not good for the House. Ed Miliband.
Let's have some tax transparency. Hands up in the Cabinet if you're going to benefit from the income tax cut. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Order. Mr. Shelbrooke. Order. Mr. Shelbrooke, I have looked to you twice. I don't want to continue to look. I think we need a little bit of silence from you. If not, you might be better off leaving the chamber. I think we understand each other. Ed Miliband.
He's the man who said sunlight is the best disinfectant. So here's the challenge. Just nod if you're going to benefit from it, or shake your head if you're not. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on, we've got plenty of time. Come on, we've got plenty of time.
Order. Both sides of the House will come to order. The Leader of the Opposition will be heard in the same way that the courtesy was given to the Chancellor. I don't want to have to rule because we will have to get firmer. No, it's only right that the country should hear what the opposition's got to say. Order. And I don't need any examples from you. Ed Miliband.
One more chance. Nod or shake your head. Are you going to benefit? Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've got one thing to say to him. Let sunshine win the day. But I hear it's good news for him, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now he's going to be able to buy his own horse. And what about
Oh no, we will not have any clapping in the chamber. No, seriously, I don't think it's doing this House any good and its reputation any good when we can't hear the Leader of the Opposition. And I think it is both sides to give courtesy now. Ed Miliband.
And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what about the hapless accomplice, the Deputy Prime Minister? I do have to say, only the Liberal Democrats could be dumb enough to think a George Osborne budget is a Robin Hood budget. Calamity Clegg strikes again. Look, this is what he said to us a few months ago about the 50p tax rate. No ifs, no buts. I do not believe the priority at a time like this is to give the tax cut to a tiny, tiny number of people who are much better off than anybody else. The party that once followed Lloyd George, now reduced to following George Osborne. The party that delivered the People's Budget of 1909, supporting the millionaire's budget of 2012. They should be ashamed. For all the talk, all the briefing, the Deputy Prime Minister has done what he's done on every big issue, from tuition fees to the betrayal on the NHS. He's rolled over and said, yes, Prime Minister. The truth is that for ordinary families, it's hurting, but it's not working, and we know why. Because this government has been cutting too far and too fast. What did the Chancellor say? What did the Chancellor say last August about America's more balanced deficit reduction plan? He said this: those who spent the whole of the past year telling us to follow the American example need to answer this simple question. Why has the US economy grown more slowly than the UK? Mr. Deputy Speaker, the numbers are in. The Chancellor is plain wrong. The US economy grew at 1.7% last year, twice the rate of ours. This government has run out of excuses. It's their mistakes which are damaging our future. It's the failure of their plan. Now, today we heard about more schemes from the Chancellor. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, why should we believe it? Every scheme he has put forward so far has failed. What was the big idea of his first budget? The National Insurance Holiday. Now, we didn't hear much about the National Insurance Holiday today, and it's no wonder, because he told us in his June budget it would help 400,000 firms. He's missed his target by 97%. The Chancellor's plan has failed. And what about the centrepiece of last year's budget? It's easy to forget now, but it was called the Budget for Growth. Now this one is my favourite. It's the Business Growth Fund. The Business Growth Fund. 6 regional offices opened, and how many businesses benefiting? 6. One. It's true. 1 for each office. The Chancellor's plan has failed. We needed a plan for growth that will work. We needed a guarantee on youth jobs. We needed a British investment bank to help small business. But on growth, on jobs, on how we pay our way in the world, this Chancellor has failed. Now on the proposal on film tax relief, let me say this. It's great to support great British success stories like Downton Abbey, A Tale, and indeed Wallace and Gromit, But it's also important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to support Downton Abbey, a tale of a group of out-of-touch millionaires who act like they're born to rule, but turn out not to be very good at it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? We all know it's a costume drama. They think it's a fly-on-the-wall documentary. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this budget will be remembered for his failure on growth and jobs and the top-rate tax cut. This isn't just a bad policy or a misjudgment. It destroys the claim the Prime Minister made. About who he was and what he believed. What did he personally say in his aims and values document sent out to every Conservative Party member? The right test for our policies is how they help the most disadvantaged in society, not the rich. It was called Built to Last. That was his test. A test this budget failed spectacularly. It's the death knell of his project, his compassionate conservatism. He and the Chancellor have shown their true colours. They promised change. They have failed on growth, on jobs, on borrowing, on fairness. Unfair, out of touch, for the few, not the many. An unfair budget built on economic failure. An unfair budget from the same old Tories.